So I'm in the process of trying to sort out this door skin here, and I've got to decide where I'm going to make the cut. The piece of door that goes on here is quite large, and will come up to about here, and I don't know if that can really be seen in the camera, but this is my cut line here that I've marked in pencil just using this piece of tape, and I've measured from 4 datum points there to the bottom of the sill here, and then subtracted about 5mm to give me a gap. So here's 340mm, 355, 370 and 397, and theoretically if I cut the door piece to fit into that at those points, I should have about a 4 or 5mm gap at the bottom, which is roughly about 3/16 of an inch. I've replaced the bottom section in the door there with a new one that I bought the other day, and this clears quite nicely. It's not bad here. The shut lines are reasonably even. I think pretty well straight. As far as I can tell, there is appears to be a very slight twist in the door. So I might try and sort that out when I do the welding. One of the problems I have is that this is the new panel which has to go on, and that one fits on there, and it's beautifully made. But of course what I have to do is fit it on and then tap the edges around, and once it's on I don't think I'm going to be able to get it off again. So I have to make sure the measurement is really accurate, so that when the door closes it doesn't hit on the bottom sill. And as I said before, there was some discrepancy with the sill. It was very slightly higher here, not a huge amount, but enough. So I've measured this 2 or 3 times, and I'm going to try and get it. It's got to be really right before I do any final cutting. So I'll probably cut this section off tonight anyway. And then mount the door back on and just double check all of these measurements again, just to make sure I've got it right. And we of course work in millimetres in Australia, and it's a bit easier for us to do that. Millimetre is roughly about 40,000ths of an inch, give or take a tiny bit. So that's the progress so far. The door, opens and shuts, and it's quite smooth, but I just really want to make sure I get the lines as good as I can, because of course on a white car the lines tend to show up a little bit more than on black cars, dark coloured cars. Well, you can probably hear the rain on the roof, which is quite nice here in otherwise sunny Adelaide. We don't get a lot of rain, so this is pretty terrific really. I know it sounds a bit strange, particularly people who get several feet of snow every year. Anyway, I've started fitting this panel on, and I have to say that it's not for the faint-hearted, it really isn't. This is one of the most difficult jobs I've had to do, and I've never done anything like this before. So one of the things I discovered when I took the panel off is that it had been spot welded along the outside of the flanges, and this had been done before the flanges were turned over underneath. So clearly in the factory they must have spot welded the skin on and then turn the flanges over underneath. So I've plug welded these because I don't have a spot welder, and they'll grind off okay. The next step is to weld this seam along here, and I'm quite nervous about that. I might wait until tomorrow to have a go at that. I've measured this very carefully. I've had the door on and off probably about 10 times. I hope everything's okay, because I can't put the panel on and fold these under and get it to fit and then take it off again if it isn't right. If it isn't right, then really I have to buy another panel. I'm a little concerned about these edges here. They're slightly proud of the original. Kilmartins make great products, and I trust them to get it right, so I'm just going to have to be very careful how I fold this over. So I think that's the next step, is to try and fold over these flanges on the 3 sides, and when I've done that I will weld this seam across here and then try the door on to fit. I had to take that bottom hinge off otherwise I can't get a hammer in to bend that flange over. So that's really the next job, and I don't think I'll do that tonight. I might go inside and have a glass of red and I don't know, sit on the veranda and watch the rain fall, because we probably won't get any more for another month or so. Well, I've taken the plunge and bent over the flanges, and actually it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, because I don't have any crimping tools or anything, so I just put them on a bench really and just hammered them over using dollies and bits of wood and stuff, and it's actually pretty good. This edge is lined up really quite well there. This edge here is also pretty good. There's a slight bit there, but I think that'll fill up with weld. That's not a problem. But you know what? I'm actually pretty pleased with that, because I was very nervous about doing it. But it seems to have come up okay. So now the next thing is just to weld this seam. You can see these datum lines that I left in here, so I can check the measurements, and you know, I've got 348 millimeters from that line there, and it's pretty well spot on to there. So that should give me about 3/16 of an inch, 5 millimeters or so clearance on the bottom of the between the bottom of the door and the outer sill, or the rocker cover panel. So now I just have to weld this in, and this is quite a long weld. I'm going to have to go very slowly on this so that I don't warp anything, but that's the next step, and I don't think I'll do that tonight. I was going to go and have a little glass of red and listen to the rain, and I decided to have a go at banging the flanges over, which I did, but now I think I will go and have a glass of red and listen to the rain. Well, I have been fettling like mad here, and I must say this door has caused me an enormous amount of frustration. I've really had to walk away from it a few times, but it's actually not a bad fit now. I've got a nice even gap down the side. It's a bit hard to see because of the difference in the colours of the steel, but that gap there is not bad. It's about 3 or 4 millimeters, just over 1/8 of an inch, I guess, in the old money. I haven't finished welding in this section here. I thought I would just have a look and try and get the fit. This fit here is not bad. There's a nice even gap there. The problem I have is that there is a twist in the door. Not a huge amount, but enough. It's a bit hard to see from this angle. If I close the door up, the door opens and shuts fine, doesn't foul or anything. But if I close the door to that point where it's pretty level there, I have a very slight overhang. I think it can probably just be seen there, on this section just here. The door was actually like that when it was on the car, even before I put the new panel on. I tried to pull it into shape. I put a turnbuckle on the inside of the door and tried to hold it in shape. When I welded the new door skin on, the door skin was the shape of the original one, so I'm not quite sure what I can do there. I might be able to just panel beat that edge around a bit. There is probably about, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so overhang. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to be noticeable and annoying. It's also possible that this panel here that I made may not be exactly the right contour, so I might be able to alter that slightly. The other issue I have is that no matter how careful I was, and I was very, very careful, and I took this on and off so many times and measured it, the gap at the bottom, while it is nice and even, is actually a bit larger than I would like. It's probably about 5/16 of an inch. It is even, so it looks okay, but it's just a bit wider. The only way I can think of fixing that is to weld a piece of wire right along the bottom length to extend it a little bit, which is a pretty horrible job to have to do. So I'll I'll have a think about that and whether I can live with it. It actually doesn't show unless you really get down and look at it. You can see the aluminium. I fitted one of the aluminium pieces on there just to see if it would fit, and everything fits all right. But you can see that a little bit underneath. So I'm really not quite sure what I'm going to do about that. That's something to sleep on, I think, and have a couple of beers and consider that for a while. But actually, the door is a pretty good fit, really. After I don't know how many times I took it on, put it on and took it off, all things considered, it's pretty good, and some people would be pleased with that. Would just like to get it a little bit better than it is. So I'll just keep persevering a bit with it and see what I can do. So I haven't finished cleaning up this well completely yet, but I did bend this edge of this door in a little bit down the bottom. I also managed to cheat a little bit on this dog leg here. This will come out slightly, so I'm actually pretty happy with that. The front section lines up reasonably well. The bottom of the door is there's still a little bit more gap than I would want. It's consistent, but as I said before, it's a bit more than I want, so I'm not quite sure. The only way I can see around that is to weld a piece of steel wire on the bottom, something about 2 millimeters wide. But after much struggling, not a lot of swearing, but faffing around, I'm actually pretty pleased with that. The gap doesn't really show up because there's so much old paint and stuff on there, but it's pretty good. It's about 3.5 mils consistently, which is just over 1/8 of an inch really, so that's pretty good. The gap at the back is a little wider, but again only about 4 millimeters or so, so that's pretty good, and it's consistent. So that's one door done, well, almost done. Now I just got the other one to do, and if anybody tells you this is easy, laugh at them, because it's probably the hardest job I've done on the body panels, the bodywork so far on the Healey.